What if I told you that the most legendary motorcycle company in the world started in a 10 by 8 foot wooden shed? What if I told you they went from building bicycles to building an empire? From bankruptcy to becoming the sound of American freedom. This is the story of two childhood friends who accidentally created a religion, a company that died and came back to life, a brand that survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and almost being killed by their own success. This is the entire history of Harley-Davidson, and trust me, it's wilder than you think. Chapter 1. The Shed That Changed Everything. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1903. While Henry Ford was still figuring out how to mass-produce cars, 2 young men were about to accidentally invent the American dream. Meet William Harley and Arthur Davidson, best friends since childhood. Harley was a draftsman. Davidson worked at a pattern-making shop. They had a simple goal: build a motorized bicycle to make their fishing trips easier. But here's the thing about their first prototype. It was absolutely terrible. The engine was so weak, it couldn't even climb Milwaukee's gentle hills without the rider pedaling. Most people would have given up. Harley and Davidson were not most people. They didn't just want to build a motorcycle, they wanted to build the motorcycle. So they did what any obsessed inventor would do. They started over from scratch. Their second attempt featured a 3-horsepower engine that could actually climb hills. They sold it to a friend for $200. And just like that, the Harley-Davidson Motor Company was born. But wait, there's a plot twist. Arthur Davidson had 2 brothers, Walter and William. And when they saw what their brother and his friend had built, they didn't just want to ride it, they wanted to build an empire. Now we had 4 founders, and the Harley-Davidson Motor Company became a perfect storm of talent. William Harley was the engineer who understood engines like Mozart understood music. Arthur Davidson was the salesman who could sell ice to an Eskimo and make them feel good about it. Walter Davidson was the mechanic who could fix anything and make it work better. William Davidson was the manufacturer who understood production, quality control, and how to scale up. By 1905, they had their first employee. By 1906, they had their first factory, a 28 by 80 foot building. Still tiny, but it was 22 times bigger than that original shed. Then Walter Davidson did something genius. He entered their motorcycle and endurance races, not just local races, but national competitions. And he didn't just compete, he dominated. Perfect scores, first place finishes. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know, what's a Harley-Davidson? The answer was simple: reliability. While other motorcycle companies were building fast, flashy machines that broke down constantly, Harley-Davidson built bikes that just worked. By 1907, they had 50 employees and were producing 150 motorcycles per year. The American motorcycle industry was exploding, and Harley-Davidson was leading the charge. Chapter 2. The VTwin Revolution. In 1909, William Harley had been experimenting with something that would change everything: the VTwin engine. Picture this. Instead of 1 cylinder, you have 2. Instead of them being in line, they're arranged in a V shape. More power, better balance, and a sound that would become legendary. That distinctive potato sound wasn't just an engine, it was the heartbeat of America. But the first V-twin was a disaster. The engine was too weak, the belt drive kept slipping, and customers were furious. Harley-Davidson did something that would define their character forever. They recalled every single motorcycle, fixed them, improved them, and made them right. The 1911 V-twin 2.0 was perfection. 6.5 horsepower, chain drive, and reliable as sunrise. The timing was perfect because America was about to go to war, and they were going to need motorcycles. But first, they had to survive their biggest challenge yet: competition from dozens of other manufacturers who were all trying to capture the growing American appetite for motorized transportation. Chapter 3. The War Years and Rising Dominance. World War I changed everything for Harley-Davidson. When the United States entered the war in 1917, the military needed fast, reliable transportation for scouts, messengers, and reconnaissance. They needed motorcycles, and lots of them. Harley-Davidson went into overdrive, producing over 20,000 motorcycles a year, with about half going to the military. But they weren't just building bikes for Americans, they were shipping to Allied forces worldwide. British troops, French cavalry, even Russian forces were all riding Harley-Davidsons. These weren't just motorcycles anymore, they were weapons of war, proving themselves under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Roy Holtz, Harley-Davidson's first military hero, was a dispatch rider who rode through enemy fire, shell craters, and impossible terrain. His Harley never let him down. When the war ended, Harley-Davidson had proven something crucial. Their motorcycles could survive anything. American soldiers were coming home with a new appreciation for the freedom of the open road, but the party was about to end. The 1920s brought a new challenge: the automobile. Henry Ford's Model T was changing everything. Suddenly, for just a few $100s more than a motorcycle, you could buy a car with a roof, doors, and room for your family. The motorcycle industry was dying. In 1920, there were over 100 motorcycle manufacturers in America. By 1930, only 3 remained: Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Henderson. Sales were plummeting, workers were being laid off, and the company that had conquered the world was about to become another casualty of progress. But the founders had an idea. If they couldn't compete with cars on practicality, they'd compete on something else entirely: emotion. They didn't just sell motorcycles. They sold adventure, freedom, the open road, the wind in your face, the feeling that you were truly alive. Slowly, it started to work. A small but dedicated group of riders emerged, people who didn't ride motorcycles because they had to, but because they wanted to. They formed clubs, took long trips, and created a culture. At the center of that culture was Harley-Davidson. Chapter 4. Surviving the Great Depression. October 1929. The stock market crashed. The Great Depression began, and the motorcycle industry was about to face its darkest hour. Who was going to buy a motorcycle when they couldn't afford food? Harley-Davidson's workforce shrunk from over 2,000 to just 300. Production dropped to barely 3,000 motorcycles per year. The company was bleeding money and tried everything to survive: 3-wheeled delivery vehicles, industrial engines, even golf carts, anything to keep the lights on. Their salvation came from an unexpected source: law enforcement. Police departments across America were discovering that motorcycles were perfect for patrol work: fast, maneuverable, and intimidating. Harley-Davidson became the official bike of American justice. Bank robbers and bootleggers feared the sound of a Harley approaching. Slowly, very slowly, they began to recover, not because of the economy, which was still terrible, but because they had found their identity. They weren't just building transportation, they were building dreams. And dreams, it turns out, are recession-proof. The 1936 EL Knucklehead was a complete revolution. Nicknamed for its knuckle-shaped rocker covers, it featured overhead valves, aluminum heads, and more power than any Harley had ever produced. 40 horsepower, 100 miles per hour top speed. This wasn't just an improvement, it was a quantum leap. They proved it on the racetrack, where Joe Petrali, Harley's star rider, won every single race of the 1935 season. Every single one, 13 out of 13 races. At Daytona Beach, the knucklehead hit 136 miles per hour, faster than any production motorcycle had ever gone. The knucklehead wasn't just fast, it was beautiful. The engine was a work of art. The lines were elegant, and the sound was pure music. For the first time, people were buying Harleys not just for transportation, but for the sheer joy of owning something magnificent. Chapter 5, World War II, The Ultimate Test, December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor. America was at war, and the military needed motorcycles like never before. Harley-Davidson transformed overnight. Civilian production stopped, and the entire factory was converted to military production. They were building one thing, the WLA, the Liberator. 90,000 motorcycles for the U.S. military, plus thousands more for Allied forces. This was the largest military motorcycle order in history. But these weren't just motorcycles, they were lifelines. In the Pacific, they carried messages across jungle terrain. In Europe, they led tank columns and scouted enemy positions. The military pushed Harley-Davidson to innovate with waterproof ignition systems, crash bars, and luggage racks, modifications that would influence civilian bikes for decades. When the war ended, Harley-Davidson had proven they could deliver under the ultimate pressure. They had built the most reliable motorcycles in the world, and everyone knew it. The war had also created something unexpected, a generation of Americans who had experienced the freedom and adventure of motorcycle riding, and they wanted more. Chapter 6, The Birth of the Biker Culture. In 1947, Hollister, California, hosted a motorcycle rally that would change everything and create the modern biker image. What started as a peaceful gathering of motorcycle enthusiasts turned into a weekend of chaos, drinking, racing in the streets, and general mayhem. The media went crazy. Life magazine published a photo of a drunk biker on a Harley, surrounded by beer bottles, with the caption, "Cyclist's Holiday. He and friends terrorize a town." America was horrified. Motorcycles went from symbols of freedom to symbols of rebellion, and Harley-Davidson was caught in the middle. The company tried to distance itself from the outlaw image, promoting family-friendly riding, organized tours, and emphasizing safety. But it was too late. Hollywood had found its new villain. Marlon Brando in The Wild One cemented the image of the motorcycle rebel. And even though he wrote a triumph in the movie, the damage was done. Here's the irony. Most motorcycle riders were actually military veterans, police officers, and regular working-class Americans. But perception became reality. Real outlaw motorcycle clubs did emerge. The Hells Angels, formed in 1948, chose Harley-Davidson as their preferred ride, not because of the company's marketing, but because Harleys were tough, reliable, and had that unmistakable sound. American motorcycling split into two worlds, the respectable riders and the rebels. Harley-Davidson found itself serving both, whether they wanted to or not. The 1957 Sportster was Harley-Davidson's answer to the new generation. The world was changing. Rock and roll was exploding. Teenagers had money, and they wanted motorcycles that matched their attitude. Smaller, lighter, and faster than the big touring bikes, the Sportster became the bike of choice for young Americans who wanted to go fast and look cool doing it. It was affordable, reliable, and had that authentic Harley sound. On the racetrack, Sportsters were dominating, with Cal Rayborn becoming Harley's new racing star. Even Elvis Presley was riding Harleys. The king of rock and roll on the king of motorcycles was a match made in heaven. Chapter 7, The Japanese Invasion. In 1959, the Honda Super Cub arrived in America with a simple slogan, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda." It was a brilliant marketing campaign. Clean, friendly, safe, the opposite of the outlaw biker image that had defined American motorcycles. And it worked. By 1965, Honda was selling more motorcycles in America than all American manufacturers combined. Harley-Davidson was caught completely off guard. They had dismissed the Japanese bikes as toys, small, cheap, and not real motorcycles. But they had bigger problems. Their bikes were developing a reputation for unreliability. Oil leaks, electrical problems, and poor quality control were driving customers away. In 1969, facing financial ruin, Harley-Davidson was sold to AMF, American Machine and Foundry, a company that made bowling equipment and industrial machinery. AMF promised to modernize production and improve quality. What they delivered was a nightmare. Motorcycles were leaving the factory with missing parts, wrong parts, and parts that didn't work. The joke in the motorcycle world was, buy a Harley, get a free box of leftover parts. Loyal customers were abandoning the brand in droves. Dealers were going out of business. The company that had survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression was dying. By 1975, Harley-Davidson's market share had dropped to just 3%. The American motorcycle industry was dead, and Harley-Davidson was the corpse. Chapter 8. The Darkest Hour. The years 1975 to 1980 were the AMF years, and if you're a Harley enthusiast, these are the years you don't talk about. Production was a mess. Quality control was non-existent, and experienced workers were leaving while new workers weren't properly trained. Customers were buying brand new Harleys that wouldn't start. Engines were seizing. Transmissions were failing. And the legendary Harley reliability was a joke. Dealers were furious, tired of dealing with angry customers and defective products. Many switched to selling Japanese bikes exclusively. The company was hemorrhaging money. AMF was losing millions every year on their motorcycle division, and there were serious discussions about shutting down Harley-Davidson entirely. But something interesting was happening in the culture. As Harley-Davidson, the company, was dying, Harley-Davidson, the legend, was growing stronger. Easy Rider had made the Harley-Davidson the symbol of American freedom. Every movie rebel, every rock star, every symbol of cool was associated with Harley-Davidson. So you had this bizarre situation. Everyone wanted a Harley-Davidson, but nobody wanted to buy one because they were terrible. That's when a group of Harley-Davidson executives decided to do something crazy. Buy the company back from AMF. Led by Vaughn Beals and Willie G. Davidson, grandson of founder Arthur Davidson, they convinced AMF to sell them the company. On June 16, 1981, the buyout was complete. Harley-Davidson was American-owned again, but they had inherited a disaster, poor quality, terrible reputation, and crushing debt. They had saved Harley-Davidson from AMF, but they still had to save it from itself. Chapter 9. The Miracle Comeback. In 1981, the new management team faced a simple choice: fix everything or go out of business. They started with quality, implementing Japanese-style quality control, statistical process control, and employee involvement programs. They were going to build motorcycles the right way, even if it took forever. At the same time, they were developing a new engine, the Evolution, nicknamed the Blockhead, which was going to be the most reliable engine Harley had ever built. But they were running out of money fast. The company was days away from bankruptcy when they made a desperate move, petitioning the U.S. government for tariff protection against Japanese motorcycles, a 45% tariff on bikes over 700 cc. It was controversial, with critics calling it protectionism and supporters calling it leveling the playing field. President Reagan visited the factory and granted the tariff. Harley-Davidson had breathing room, but they knew it was temporary. In 1984, the Evolution engine launched, and it was everything they had promised. Reliable, powerful, and unmistakably Harley. Quality improved dramatically, warranty claims dropped, and customer satisfaction soared. For the first time in years, people were buying Harleys because they were good motorcycles, not just because they were Harleys. Sales began to recover, slowly at first, then faster. The motorcycle that everyone thought was dead was coming back to life. In 1987, something unprecedented happened. Harley-Davidson asked the government to remove the tariff protection a year early. They didn't need protection anymore because they could compete with anyone, anywhere, on quality and performance. By 1988, Harley-Davidson had reclaimed 50% of the American heavyweight motorcycle market. The company that had been left for dead was not just surviving, it was thriving. They went public in 1986, and the stock price soared, making early investors fortunes. Chapter 10. The Cultural Renaissance. The real success was cultural. Harley-Davidson had become more than a motorcycle company. It was a lifestyle brand. HOG, the Harley Owners Group, became the largest motorcycle club in the world with hundreds of thousands of members unified by their love of the brand. Celebrities were riding Harleys again, not just rebels and outlaws, but mainstream stars like Jay Leno, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Mickey Rourke. The biker image was changing as rich urban bikers, RUBS, doctors, lawyers, and executives who rode Harleys on weekends, joined the culture. The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally grew from a few thousand riders to hundreds of thousands, becoming the largest motorcycle gathering in the world. Harley-Davidson was building new factories, hiring thousands of workers, and expanding globally. The comeback was complete. The king had returned. The 1990s saw the American economy booming, and Harley-Davidson was riding the wave. They couldn't build motorcycles fast enough. With waiting lists 6 months to a year long, people were paying above sticker price for the privilege of owning a Harley. In 1998, Harley-Davidson bought Buell Motorcycle Company, founded by ex-Harley engineer Eric Buell. In their attempt to compete in the sport bike market, they were expanding globally with new dealerships in Europe, Asia, and South America. The Harley-Davidson dream was becoming a worldwide phenomenon. But the biggest news was the V-Rod, Harley's first completely new motorcycle design in decades. Liquid-cooled, high performance, and unlike anything they had ever built, the V-Rod was controversial. Harley purists hated it because it didn't sound like a Harley or look like a Harley, but it was successful, attracting new customers who had never considered Harley-Davidson before. Chapter 11. The Century Mark and Modern Challenges. In 2003, Harley-Davidson celebrated its 100th anniversary. The company that had started in a shed was now worth billions of dollars. The anniversary celebration in Milwaukee drew over 250,000 riders from around the world, the largest motorcycle gathering in history. By 2005, Harley-Davidson stock was trading at over $70 per share. The company was selling every motorcycle they could build and was the undisputed king of American motorcycles. But there were warning signs. The customer base was aging, young riders were choosing other brands, and the economy was about to collapse. The 2008 financial crisis hit America like a tsunami, and luxury items like motorcycles were the first casualties. Harley-Davidson sales collapsed from over 350,000 motorcycles in 2006 to barely 200,000 in 2009. The company that had seemed invincible was struggling again. Factories were closed, workers were laid off, and the company was fighting for survival once more. In 2009, Harley-Davidson shut down Buell Motorcycle Company, a controversial decision that angered many fans. The company underwent massive restructuring with new management, new strategies, and a new focus on efficiency and profitability. Recovery was slow. The motorcycle market had changed. Younger riders were choosing different brands, and the traditional Harley customer was aging out. But Harley-Davidson was preparing for the future, developing electric motorcycles, partnering with technology companies, and reimagining what a motorcycle could be. In 2019, the Livewire electric motorcycle launched. It was fast, quiet, and completely different from anything Harley had ever built. Reception was mixed. Some loved the technology and performance, while others felt it betrayed everything Harley-Davidson stood for. Chapter 12. The Eternal Ride. Today, Harley-Davidson faces new challenges, competition from electric motorcycle startups, a changing market, and an aging customer base. But they're adapting with new models, new technologies, and new strategies to attract younger riders. So what is Harley-Davidson really? Is it just a motorcycle company, or is it something more? A symbol of freedom, a piece of American culture, a way of life. That distinctive sound, the potato, potato, potato of a Harley VTwin, isn't just an engine. It's the sound of rebellion, of freedom, of the open road. From cops to outlaws, from soldiers to celebrities, from weekend warriors to lifers, Harley-Davidson has been the ride of choice for everyone who refuses to be ordinary. Today, in Milwaukee, they're still building motorcycles, still pushing boundaries, still trying to perfect that balance between tradition and innovation. The riders have changed, the bikes have evolved, but the spirit remains the same. When you throw your leg over a Harley-Davidson, you're not just riding a motorcycle, you're joining a tradition that goes back over 120 years. It all started in a 10 by 8 foot shed with two friends who had a crazy idea and the determination to see it through. Today, Harley-Davidson is a global brand worth billions, but at its heart, it's still those two friends in that shed trying to build something special. The road continues, the adventure never ends, and somewhere out there on a highway you've never traveled, your Harley is waiting. Harley-Davidson. The legend continues.